everybody, it's Holly here today with a new video for Marker Pop. Today we're going to be using this new Winter Unicorn set from Lawn Fawn. I'm showing here on the card. You can see when you wave the card around a little bit, you can see a lot of shimmer on it. So I'm going to start out using 3 panels of white cardstock that I die cut with the cross-stitch rectangles from Lawn Fawn, and I'm using the second largest rectangle. And I cut 3 panels of Neenah Solar white cardstock. And then from those 3 panels I left 1 solid, and then I cut the Stitch Mountain range from Lawn Fawn. I used the small mountain range, and then I also used the Stitch Hillside borders to create 2 hillsides. And then I was also able to get the mountain caps from the Stitch Mountains, from that centerpiece there that was cut out from the 2 hillsides. So we're not wasting any paper here at all. And we're also going to use the negative piece from the mountain range panel as well later on. So we're going to start out using some peacock feathers distress inks, and I'm using the new 6x6 perfectly plaid Christmas paper from Lawn Fawn. So I'm going to be using colors that match the paper. So I'm using peacock feathers, and I'm just very lightly, I inked up the sponge and then I rubbed it off on the scrap paper as best as I could, and then with a very light hand I added a little bit of background for my sky. And then I'm going to add some color to the mountain caps and the Stitch hillsides to kind of add some shadows and depth in my card as I build the scene here. And I didn't re-ink the sponge dauber, it's just from that first initial one. I just wanted a little bit of color, so I didn't add any extra to it. So I'm going to use the Falling Snow die from Avery Elle. This is a brand new die that just came out with its latest release. And I'm going to use some partial die cutting because I don't want my snowfall to cut directly across that stitched rectangle there. I want to just have it within the cross-stitch border. So I'm going to put this in between my cutting plates, leaving the edge hanging off of the cutting plates. And then I'm going to run it through the Big Shot and run it through about 3/4 of the way. And then I'm going to roll it back out without having to go, because if you roll it through the whole way, you'll end up cutting those circles out of the other end of your cross-stitch rectangle there. So then you're going to very carefully flip it, turn it around, and put the opposite end up against the edges of the plates. And then do the same thing, roll it through about 3/4 of the way, and then roll back out. And then when you take it out, the falling snow will be within the borders of the cross-stitch edges on your rectangle panel. And then I'm going to take the Stitch hillsides that I cut for the front of the panel. I'm going to take the one that's going to be in the front, and I'm putting it in the Mini Misty. And I'm using the Sentiment from the Winter Unicorn and the Storm Cloud ink from Lawn Fawn. This is a new ink that just came out as well. It's like a very dark gray. And I'm going to stamp All I Want for Christmas Is in the lower right hand corner of that front hillside. And then I'm going to use some Tombow Mono multi-liquid glue to assemble my scene. And I'm going to go ahead and glue down the mountain range, the 2 hillsides, and then I'm going to add the snow caps. I left the mountain range completely white, and I didn't add any of that distress ink to it because I wanted that to be a pure white, and then I just wanted the snow caps to stand out, so I just added a very little bit of that ink to the caps. And I decided to use the peacock feathers to match the paper better because on the first card that I made that I show at the beginning, I used tumbled glass, and that was more of a sky blue color, and it didn't quite match that perfectly plaid Christmas paper that well, so I thought this peacock feathers colored matched a whole lot better. So then I'm going to take the opposite, or the reverse piece, negative piece is what I'm looking at, the negative piece of that mountain range panel that I cut, and that's actually going to fit right on the back because it's cut to the same size, and it'll cover up the opening of those little falling snow holes. So you're basically not wasting any cardstock, and you don't have to dig around in your scraps to find another piece. So I'm going to glue that down. And then I'm going to, for the shimmer that's all over the front of the card, I used a Crafter's Companion sparkle pen in the clear color. And I just rubbed that over the mountain range and then all over the hillsides. Now when you're using these pens, you want to be careful because they're very juicy. Just like a Zig pen, you can paint with these pens. So you could use them with like your Zig color brush markers in place of a water brush. So as you rub them over the Distress ink, it's going to make the Distress ink move a little bit because the Distress ink reacts with water. So you just want to be really careful and just kind of work in a circular motion. And you definitely don't want to run that sparkle pen over your stamp sentiment because it will smear the ink because the ink is water-based. So I just kind of worked around the sentiment. And then later on I add a little bit of the sparkle pen to the unicorn scarf and the horn. And I am not a fan of this pen at all. This is my third or fourth time trying to use it. I don't know what it is, but for me this pen does not dry. It stays wet or the glitter comes off. You could rub it up against something, you could just lay it down on something, anything that comes in contact with the front of this card, that glitter comes off. And for me, that just doesn't work. So I think in the future I will stick with my Zig Wink of Stella pens from Zig. So then I'm going to go ahead and stamp the Winter Unicorn onto a piece of Neenah Solar White cardstock, and I'm using Memento Tuxedo Black ink. And I'm going to go ahead and add some shadows with my Copic markers. I'm going to use C00, C1, and C2 for the unicorn's body. And I'm starting today with the darkest color, and then I'm working my way to the light color. And then once I have all my shadows in where I want them, I'm going to go back over them with the Zero colorless blender to kind of fade everything out together and make it a little bit more smoother. This will also help the gray set back a bit so it's not so bold on the final piece. And then I'm going to go ahead and color in the rest of the image, and I did keep picking more colors that would match that perfectly plaid Christmas paper. I'm going to use Y00 and Y02 for the unicorn's horn. And then I'm going to use R02 and R04, I believe, for the scarf. And I only use 2 colors for the scarf. And then I used 2 colors for the hair. And I also added a little bit of R20 to the cheek and in the inner ear. And for the hair, I'm using BG10, BG11, and BG13. I didn't make the hair super fancy. I just laid the color in the best that I could and left a little bit of a highlight. As you know from some of my other videos and projects, I suck at making coloring hair with Copic, so I don't even try anymore. This is a super cute image to color. It's really quick and easy to color. And I think also, even though she's wearing a scarf, you could use it for other holidays as well. It doesn't have to be winter. That could be like a everyday scarf that she's wearing. So once I have that all colored in, I'm going to go ahead and die cut it using the coordinating die cut. Oh, and on the hooves there I used C5 to put like a tiny little line, and then I went back over it with C1. And then I used my multi-liner there to touch up the little hoof that wasn't quite stamped all the way. So again, I'm going to go ahead and use the coordinating die to die cut out the yellow unicorn, or if you don't have the coordinating die, you could just cut it out by hand. Simple image, pretty easy to cut. And I'm just going to run that through my Big Shot. And then once I have the unicorn cut out, I'm going to go ahead and start working on the inside of the card. So I'm going to use a piece of 8.5 by 11 Neenah Solar White cardstock, 110 pound weight that I cut in half. And then I folded it into an A2 size card, which is 4.25 by 5.5. Oh, and here I added some more of that clear sparkle pen to the unicorn's horn and the little scarf. So I'm folding the cardstock in half with my scoreboard, and then I'm just going to go ahead and put it into the, I'm actually using the large Misty here. And I'm going to stamp the sentiment that comes with the set. Says all I want for Christmas is, and then it has you, and then Anna Unicorn in parentheses. So I have the Anna Unicorn and the U above it. And then I wanted an exclamation point and the one, so I went ahead and used the exclamation point that's in the new Jump for Joy set. That was like the perfect size to use for inside here. And I'm using the Stormcloud ink to stamp that inside there. And then I decided to add a couple little hearts. So I'm using the tiny little solid heart from the unicorn set. And then in the Jump for Joy, there's an outline heart. So I'm going to stamp those inside using the Lawn Fawn Guava ink. And then I also took a piece of the Perfectly Plaid Christmas paper and I die cut that using the largest cross stitch rectangle die so that it would fit the front of the card. And I'm going to go ahead and add some Tombow Montse glue to that, and I'm going to go ahead and put that on the front of my card. I like to use liquid glue when I'm putting a solid piece over the front of a card because it gives you adequate time to move it around. It's easier to shift it if it's not lined up perfectly. And then I'm going to add some Tombow Mono, or I'm sorry, I'm using my ATG gun to adhere that image panel to the front. And I'm just centering that up in the front. I didn't want to add foam adhesive because it was going to be foam on the unicorn, so I didn't want to add too much height. So I'm just using some of the foam tape on the back of the little unicorn image. And I'm just going to adhere that down on the front. And that pretty much completes my card. So thanks for watching. Be sure to stop by the Marker Pop store and pick up some of the new Lawn Fawn winter release. This is a very cute release. There's so many fun stuff in it. So I'll be back with more projects using products from this release. And I will see you guys soon with a new video. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.